From Goldenlife Creative Vision Studios, we create wisdom through vision. Every story begins as a spark. Every spark becomes light. And through light, we create wisdom. Goldenlife Creative Vision Studios.
We usually see the Mahabharata as a clash of massive armies on a physical field, but the real roots of this epic aren't at Kurukshetra. They are buried within the microscopic terrain of the human mind. These monumental statues represent warriors in peak control, yet the people steering these chariots operated on autopilot, driven by psychological forces they never fully understood. Every person carries a specific strength, but alongside it sits a blind spot. This hidden, unacknowledged fear sits in the subconscious, quietly intercepting life decisions. We remain unaware as this deep fear takes the wheel, overriding logic on our behalf. It raises a difficult question. How many of our conscious choices are actually ours, and how many are just scripts written by these unexamined shadows? Thousands of years before the war, on the banks of the river Ganga, King Shantanu met the goddess Ganga. We usually call this a romance, but it was actually a collision of two very different psychological states. Shantanu was driven by a subconscious fear of loss. Ganga, however, arrived with a conscious divine mission to complete a karmic cycle. Ganga demanded absolute silence as the price for her presence. Her condition was simple: he must never ask her a single question. A powerful king agreed to this because his terror of losing her overrode his cognitive reasoning. His blind spot chose companionship over logic. When a subconscious fear meets a rigid external demand, the resulting compromise triggers a chain reaction that is almost impossible to stop. The cycle began immediately. A child would be born, the goddess would take the infant to the river, and the king, bound by his own fear, would watch without a word. This sequence repeated year after year, forming a continuous record of loss that is still studied today. Shantanu was trapped. He wasn't just bound by a verbal promise, he was anchored by the weight of a fear he refused to examine. These unexamined patterns create psychological prisons, where we find ourselves reliving the same agony because we are afraid to look at why it's happening. The ancient ruins tell us this story, but the dynamic itself is very much alive in the present day. We see it in modern relationships, that magnetic connection that feels right instantly, even when it makes no sense. Often, that feeling of rightness is just our subconscious recognizing a familiar, toxic pattern. The structural nodes of Shantanu's story align perfectly with the loops we find ourselves in today. The red flags are identical: the fear of asking questions, or the choice to ignore intuition just to keep someone close. We end up reenacting ancient tragedies because our unhealed blind spots are picking our partners for us. These patterns, no matter how destructive, never break on their own. The cycle only shatters when it is consciously seen and acknowledged. The forces we ignore within us direct our path until we bring them into the light. Identifying your personal blind spot returns the control of your life to your conscious mind. Stop looking at Shantanu. Instead, identify the pattern running your life today. If this helped you see something new, like this video. Comment with a pattern you've recognized and subscribe to The Explainer for more deep dives into the mechanics of the mind.
A queen's duty is never to herself. Let the council wait.
I will not yield my right to the throne. This kingdom belongs to me alone. Duryodhan, do not let your pride destroy us.
In the ancient golden corridors of the Grand Hastinapur Palace, a young queen prepares to make a choice. According to the traditional telling of the Mahabharata, when Gandhari learns that her husband, King Dhritarashtra, is blind, she decides to bind her own eyes with a silk cloth for the rest of her life. For centuries, this singular act has been praised. It is widely taught as the ultimate display of devoted loyalty and noble sacrifice. But the facts of the story point to a different reality. This was a willful psychological surrender, one that laid the groundwork for an empire's collapse. To understand why, we can visualize the psychological concept of chosen blindness. This logic model shows a bright central node, which represents a person's active awareness, being deliberately encased in a thick, dark boundary ring. Gandhari was not born without sight. She made a conscious, willful decision to shut down her own awareness to match her husband's physical limitations. Facing the harsh reality of her husband's condition would require extreme discomfort. She traded that discomfort for her own emotional comfort and an illusion of peace. When you deliberately refuse to look at a harsh environment, you do not erase that environment. You only erase your ability to navigate it. The immediate consequence of tying that cloth was a total loss of moral authority. By removing her sight, the one person in the palace entirely capable of seeing the truth voluntarily gave up her power to guide her family and establish necessary boundaries. We can map this dynamic using a systemic hierarchy chart. Notice the top node representing oversight. When it voluntarily goes offline, the subordinate nodes beneath it immediately vibrate, expand chaotically, and turn red. Gandhari stood completely physically still and isolated in the dark, but outside her immediate space, the kingdom was moving rapidly. A vacuum of leadership does not stay empty. It is immediately filled by the most aggressive forces present within the environment. That chaos materialized directly in her son. Young Duryodhana grew up entirely without boundaries, cultivating a deeply aggressive and unchecked energy. The formula for this kind of destructive escalation is simple. When you witness something wrong and do nothing, your silence transforms into support, and your inaction functions as active approval. Early on, the behavioral imbalances within the young Kauravas were minor. They could have been easily corrected, but because no one was watching them, those minor issues mutated into unstoppable chaos. By removing herself from the role of a witness, Gandhari removed the primary guardrail that could have checked the growing imbalance in her household. Within the average modern household, this decision to look away from uncomfortable truths follows the same psychological blueprint. The modern blindfold is the act of witnessing a toxic dynamic, an escalating workplace problem, or bad behavior from a family member, and deliberately looking away to avoid a difficult conversation. People who do this tell themselves they are simply keeping the peace. They use the exact same delusion of loyalty that Gandhari used, and the result is identical. Small interpersonal issues that are ignored quietly mutate into complete relationship breakdowns. Keeping quiet because you fear conflict does not preserve peace. It grants active permission for toxicity to thrive. Breaking this habit of avoidance requires us to completely redefine what true loyalty actually looks like. Genuine loyalty is never blind. It requires the courage to see a situation's flaws with absolute clarity and still choose to correct them, no matter how uncomfortable the process might be. What you choose to hide from yourself in the dark does not disappear. It grows. It is worth asking where you might be wearing a blindfold in your own life just to keep the peace, because unchecked avoidance eventually breeds extreme insecurity, an act of jealousy that we will see tear a family apart in the next chapter as we decode the rise of Duryodhana.
In corridors of gold and stone, a queen renounces what is known. A folded silk, a chosen night, to match the dark and quench the light. She calls it honor, calls it grace, a quiet veil across the face. Silence isn't peace, it's a closing door. When you look away, the shadow asks for more. Loyalty was never meant to hide the sun. The blindfold you tie is the damage you've begun. Across the boardrooms, through our halls, the same old silent curtain falls. We bite our tongues to keep the calm and mistake the poison for a bomb. When leaders turn their eyes away, the quiet rot begins to sway.
Silence isn't peace, it's a closing door. When you look away, the shadow asks for more. Loyalty was never meant to hide the sun. The blindfold you tie is the damage you've begun.